When Prophet Ibrahim, left is not found in comfort or abundance, but in the silence of the desert when all worldly means have vanished. It is in those moments that a believer's heart learns to say, Hasbi Allah, Allah is enough for me. The legacy of Hajar, Ray continues to live on in every pilgrim who performs the Sa'i during Hajj and Umrah, retracing her steps between Safa and Marwa. It is a ritual not of despair, but of hope, a remembrance that Allah answers those who strive with sincerity and patience. Her test of isolation became a lesson for all generations. When the world turns silent and your heart feels alone, remember that Allah never leaves his servant without purpose. Every hardship hides a hidden mercy, and every tear shed in faith waters the seeds of divine reward. Hajar's story remains a living proof that trusting Allah when all seems lost is the beginning of true victory. When Hajar's Ray found herself in the barren valley of Makkah, the sun blazed fiercely upon the endless sands. There were no trees to shade her, no rivers to drink from, and no sign of human life in sight. She had been left there by her husband, Prophet Ibrahim, under the command of Allah. Though her heart trembled with uncertainty, her faith remained stronger than her fear. As she held her infant son, Ismail's close to her chest, she whispered prayers of trust, knowing that Allah would never abandon those who rely upon him completely. But soon, the test deepened. The water she had was gone, and the cries of her thirsty child pierced the silence of the desert. Panic rose in her heart, not from disbelief, but from a mother's love and desperation. She could not bear to watch her child suffer, so she began searching for any sign of help. Her eyes caught the hill of Safa, and she climbed it swiftly, scanning the horizon for anything. But there was no one. The land stretched endlessly in every direction, lifeless and silent. Yet Hajar did not give up. She descended from Safa and ran across the hot sand toward the hill of Marwa. The journey was long, her feet burned, her heart pounded, and her tears mixed with sweat. But her determination did not waver. She reached Marwa and looked again for help. Still nothing, not a soul in sight. But she refused to surrender to despair. She ran back again to Safa, then to Marwa, 7 times in total, driven by faith and the hope that Allah would answer her. Each step she took, each tear that fell, was a symbol of pure tawakkul, complete trust in Allah. In that moment, she did not know that her running would become an act of worship for every believer until the end of time. She did not realize that her struggle would be remembered by millions who would imitate her path between Safa and Marwa during the sacred pilgrimage of Hajj and Umrah. What seemed like a desperate act in the middle of nowhere was, in truth, a divine lesson in perseverance written by Allah himself. As she reached Marwa for the final time, exhausted and breathless, she heard a sound. Turning toward her baby, she saw the angel Jibril, striking the ground with his wing beside Ismail. From that dry desert floor burst forth a spring, the blessed Zamzam. Its water gushed with purity and life, flowing endlessly. Her tears of pain turned into tears of gratitude as she rushed to contain the water, thanking Allah for his mercy. What had begun as a test and ended as a miracle. This story of Hajar's Ray is not just a historical event. It is a divine message for every soul facing hardship. Her running between the hills teaches that when life feels like a desert of despair, effort must continue even when the outcome is unseen. Her struggle shows that Allah's help may not come immediately, but it always arrives at the perfect time. Every believer's Safa and Marwa is different. A test, a loss, a trial, but the lesson is the same. Never stop striving, never stop believing. Hajar's faith transformed a lifeless desert into the heart of Islamic worship. The spring of Zamzam still flows today, quenching the thirst of millions, reminding us that struggle, when done for Allah's sake, always leads to sustenance. Her story whispers to every heart in pain, keep running, keep believing, because somewhere in your struggle lies your own Zamzam, the miracle that awaits those who never lose faith in the mercy of their Creator. In the scorching emptiness of the Arabian desert, where the sand stretched endlessly and the sun burned without mercy, Hajar stood as a symbol of complete submission to Allah's will. Left with her infant son Ismail, in a place where no plant grew and no bird flew, she faced a moment that would test the limits of human faith. Prophet Ibrahim, following Allah's command, had left them there and walked away with a heavy heart, trusting in the one who never abandons. Hajar, though a mother filled with emotion and fear, refused to let despair take over. When she asked Ibrahim if Allah had commanded him to leave them there, and he nodded, her heart found peace. Then Allah will not abandon us, she said. And with those words, faith conquered fear. Days passed, and the little provisions they had were soon gone. The water skin dried, and the infant's cries of thirst pierced her soul. The sight of her child struggling under the scorching sun was unbearable for a mother's heart. Hajar could not stand still. Desperation and devotion pushed her to act. She climbed the hill of Safa, searching the horizon for any sign of water or human life, but she found none. Then she descended and ran through the valley to the hill of Marwa, her feet trembling, her breath breaking, yet her hope unshaken. Between the two hills, she ran 7 times, her heart crying out not to the world, but to Allah alone. This running was not in vain. It was not a meaningless act of desperation. It was worship in motion. Every step she took echoed a believer's struggle, the journey between hope and fear, between patience and prayer. Allah watched her from above, her effort becoming a symbol for all who would come after her. And just as her strength began to fade, Allah's mercy descended upon her in the most miraculous way. When she returned to her child, she saw something extraordinary. Little Ismail, in his distress, struck the ground with his heel, and suddenly, from beneath him, a stream of water burst forth. It was not an ordinary spring, but a divine gift that would be known forever as Zamzam. The water of life, blessed and pure, flowed endlessly in the heart of the desert. Hajar quickly began to contain it, shaping a small pool around it while saying, Zamzam, meaning stop, stop, as she tried to gather the precious water. That moment was not just the answer to a mother's plea, but the fulfillment of Allah's eternal promise. That patience and prayer never go unanswered. Zamzam became more than water. It became a symbol of Allah's mercy, flowing through generations as a reminder of what faith can bring. That barren land, once lifeless and abandoned, became the site of Mecca, the center of worship for all believers. Millions of Muslims now drink from Zamzam during their pilgrimage, retracing Hajar's footsteps between Safa and Marwa, reliving her devotion, and feeling the echo of her prayer in their own hearts. Hajar's Rai story teaches that even when the world seems silent, Allah hears. When the means are gone, he creates new ones. Her tears, once shed in desperation, became rivers of mercy for all time. The miracle of Zamzam was born from the heart of a woman who refused to lose faith, who chose prayer over panic and patience over despair. Every drop of Zamzam tells her story, that when a believer trusts completely in Allah, even the driest desert can give birth to a spring of endless blessings. When Hajar's Ray stood alone in the endless stretch of desert, holding her infant son Ismail close, she faced a test that would shake any human heart. The scorching heat of the Arabian sun beat down mercilessly. The sand beneath her feet burned, and around her lay nothing but silence and emptiness. Prophet Ibrahim, obeying Allah's command, had left her and their child in that barren valley with only a small supply of water and dates. There was no sign of life, no shelter, and no one to turn to. Yet in that moment of isolation, Hajar's Ray chose trust over fear. She asked Ibrahim, only one question, whether Allah had commanded this. When he nodded, she replied with unshakable faith, then he will not abandon us. These words were not just a statement. They were a declaration of complete submission and certainty in the mercy of Allah. As the hours turned into days, her supplies ran out and her baby began to cry from thirst. Every cry pierced her heart, yet she refused to lose hope. Driven by love and desperation, she began to run between the two hills of Safa and Marwa, searching for help. Her heart raced with fear, her eyes filled with tears, but her trust in Allah never wavered. She ran 7 times, her body exhausted and her soul tested, but she continued, believing that Allah sees every step, hears every prayer, and knows every tear that falls. Her effort was not in vain. At that moment of complete surrender, Allah answered her silent plea. Beneath her son's tiny feet, water began to spring forth. The blessed well of Zamzam, a divine gift that continues to flow to this day. This miracle was more than just water. It was a sign of Allah's mercy and a reward for unwavering faith. The desert that once echoed with the cries of despair now flowed with life. Hajar's Caesarea struggle became immortalized in the hearts of believers. Every year, millions of Muslims reenact her journey during Hajj, walking the same path between Safa and Marwa, reminding themselves that true faith requires effort, patience, and complete reliance on Allah. Hajar's Ezra story became a living symbol of sacrifice, perseverance, and divine trust. Her faith did not just save her and her child, it became the foundation of an ummah. From her son Ismail's came generations of prophets, including the final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, CSAW. The valley where she once stood in despair became the holiest city in the world, Mecca, the center of Islamic worship. Her tears watered the roots of a spiritual legacy that continues to guide humanity. Allah turned her loneliness into leadership, her fear into faith, and her pain into purpose. The story of Hajar's rod teaches that the strength of a mother's faith can shape the destiny of nations. Her unwavering belief in Allah transformed a barren desert into a sanctuary of blessings. It reminds us that when we place our complete trust in Allah, no circumstance is too hard, no place is too empty, and no moment is too hopeless. Allah can bring ease from struggle, water from dry ground, and mercy from pain. Every believer who faces trials, loneliness, or despair can look to Hajar's raid as a timeless example. Her tears were not of weakness, but of strength. Her silence not of defeat, but of devotion. Through her story, Allah teaches that the foundation of faith is not built in comfort, but in the desert of hardship. Hajar's faith became the heartbeat of Islam, a mother's trust that gave rise to an ummah guided by divine promise. In the scorching desert of Mecca, where not a single drop of water could be found and the earth cracked beneath the heat, Hajar stood as a symbol of faith beyond human limits. Left alone by her husband, Prophet Ibrahim with her infant son Ismail's she faced what seemed like the harshest test a mother could endure. Yet her heart did not waver. She trusted in the command of Allah, even though her eyes saw only emptiness and her soul trembled with exhaustion. The desert that surrounded her was silent, but her faith spoke louder than her fear. When the food and water she had ran out, the cries of her thirsty child pierced her heart. In desperation, she began to run between the hills of Safa and Marwa, hoping to find something, a sign of life. She ran 7 times under the burning sun, not knowing that her act of struggle and surrender would one day be immortalized as part of the sacred pilgrimage. Each step she took was driven not by despair alone, but by love, hope, and belief that Allah would never abandon those who trust him completely. At that moment of human weakness, divine mercy descended. From beneath the tiny feet of her son, Allah brought forth the miracle of Zamzam, pure water flowing endlessly from the desert ground. Her tears of grief turned into tears of gratitude as she witnessed the impossible becoming reality. What began as a mother's cry for help became a timeless sign of Allah's compassion. Every drop of Zamzam since then has carried her story, a reminder that patience and prayer are never in vain. Hajar's al-Ray struggle was not just a moment in history, it was the birth of a spiritual legacy. The valley that once echoed her cries became the heart of Islam. The Kaaba was later built there, and millions of believers now walk between Safa and Marwa, reenacting her perseverance and faith. Her loneliness became a lesson for every believer who feels abandoned, forgotten, or tested. Her story teaches that despair is not a dead end, but a turning point, the place where human effort meets divine mercy. Her devotion showed that faith is not the absence of struggle, but the strength to keep moving when the world around you offers no comfort. It is to believe in the unseen when logic fails, to hold on to hope when every door appears closed. Hajar's ride transformed her moment of despair into lifelong devotion, and through her, Allah transformed a desolate desert into a sacred destination for all of humanity. Her tears, once shed in isolation, are now honored by millions who travel from every corner of the earth to remember her story. She reminds us that true faith does not erase pain, it gives it purpose. Every believer who faces hardship, loneliness, or uncertainty can find in Hajar's journey a reflection of their own struggle. She teaches that Allah hears every cry, knows every fear, and answers every sincere prayer, sometimes in ways we least expect. The story of Hajar's array is not just about survival, it is about transformation. It is about how the deepest despair can become the source of the greatest devotion. Her unwavering trust in Allah turned her tears into a river that never runs dry and her solitude into a symbol of spiritual strength. Her life stands as a reminder that when faith meets patience, Allah turns deserts into gardens and tears into timeless blessings. Hajar's ray stands as one of the most inspiring figures of patience, faith, and unwavering trust in Allah. Her story begins in a moment of profound hardship when she was left alone in the barren plains of Mecca with her infant son, Ismail's ayest. The scorching sun beat down on the endless sands, and there was no sign of water or shelter. Any human being could have been overwhelmed by fear and despair, yet Hajar's rave did not succumb to panic. Instead, she turned her heart to Allah, seeking comfort in prayer and placing her complete trust in His wisdom. Her tears, though born of longing and worry, were also a manifestation of her deep faith. They were not a sign of weakness, but of courage, a silent acknowledgement that Allah alone holds the power to provide, guide, and protect. In her desperation, Hajar's RA began running between the hills of Safa and Marwa, searching for water, hope and a sign of relief for her child. Every step she took symbolized determination, resilience, and the tireless pursuit of sustenance in the face of adversity. Her actions were not merely physical, they were acts of devotion, a living prayer demonstrating that faith is most powerful when it translates into effort. This seemingly simple act would later become immortalized in the Islamic ritual of Sa'i, performed by millions of pilgrims during Hajj, reminding the world that struggle and perseverance in Allah's path are never wasted. The miracle of Zamzam water emerged from her unwavering trust. From beneath the tiny feet of her child, Allah caused water to spring forth, turning a moment of despair into one of divine blessing. This event serves as a timeless reminder that Allah's provision often comes in unexpected ways, and that patience, reliance on Him, and proactive effort can transform even the harshest circumstances into sources of sustenance and mercy. The water of Zamzam, flowing for generations, continues to quench the thirst of millions, a living testament to the enduring impact of Hajar's ray faith and trust. Her story also highlights the role of a mother's faith in shaping the future. Hajar's ray courage and steadfastness laid the foundation for the spiritual and physical development of Makkah and the sacred lineage of prophets. Through her trials, she demonstrated that sincere reliance on Allah can turn personal hardship into a legacy that benefits generations. Her tears in the desert were never wasted. They became the symbol of endurance and divine blessing, inspiring countless believers to place their trust in Allah, even when circumstances appear insurmountable. Above all, the story of Hajar's ray teaches a profound spiritual truth. Faith is most genuine when it persists beyond understanding, when it remains steadfast even in the absence of visible solutions. Life often presents deserts of despair, moments of isolation, uncertainty, and hardship that test the core of our trust in Allah. Hajar's Rai exemplifies that these deserts are not places of punishment, but arenas for demonstrating devotion, courage, and absolute reliance on the divine. Her life reminds every believer that despair, when coupled with faith and perseverance, can transform into divine opportunity, shaping destinies and nurturing spiritual strength that endures for eternity. The Tears of Hajar's rare echo across centuries, speaking to all who seek guidance in trials. They remind us that faith beyond circumstance is not passive, it is active, resilient, and transformative. It teaches that Allah's wisdom surpasses human comprehension, and that trust in Him has the power to turn the harshest deserts of our lives into sources of eternal blessing, hope, and divine mercy. Through Hajar's example, believers learn that patience, perseverance, and unshakable faith can illuminate even the darkest paths, proving that every tear shed in sincerity is a seed of divine reward.